Look at this plane closely. You thinking something is wrong with it. The engines aren't under the wings. They aren't bolted to the tail either. They're sitting right on top of the wings out in the open, in the middle of the wind, for 60 years. Every engineer on Earth said that spot was the one place on jet you could never put engine. So why did one company do exactly that and end up building the fastest, quietest, most fuel-efficient private jet in its class? Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're tearing into one of the strangest looking success stories in modern aviation, the HondaJet. Yes, that Honda. The same company that makes your Civic and your lawnmower engine also builds one of the most technologically advanced light business jets in the world. And the reason it looks so weird is also the reason it's so good. This isn't a styling gimmick. It's the result of a nearly 30-year engineering obsession, thousands of hours in wind tunnels, and a partnership with NASA. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why Honda broke one of aviation's oldest rules, and why nobody had done it before them. Let's get into it. The problem with normal jets. To understand why the HondaJet looks the way it does, you first need to understand how every other light jet is built. Look at a Cessna Citation, an Embraer Phenom, or a Learjet. Almost all of them mount their engines one of two ways: bolted onto the rear fuselage, near the tail, or slung underneath the wings on big commercial jets. Both of these approaches work, but they come with baggage, literally and figuratively. Rear fuselage mounts need heavy internal structure running through the back of the plane to support the engine's weight and absorb its vibration. That structure eats directly into cabin space and cargo room. On a small jet where every inch of interior volume matters, that's a real cost. Underwing mounts, meanwhile, hang the engine low to the ground. That means longer landing gear, more exposure to runway debris getting sucked into the intake, and pylons and nacelles that disturb the airflow right where the wing meets the fuselage, creating drag. Engineers have known about a third option for decades: mounting the engine on top of the wing. In theory, it solves a lot of these problems. In practice, almost nobody could make it work. Every time someone tried, the airflow around the engine collided violently with the airflow over the wing, creating shock waves, extra drag, and buffeting that made the aircraft slower and less stable. The exact opposite of what you want. So the overwing engine idea sat in textbooks as a nice in theory doesn't work footnote. Until Honda decided to actually go find out why. Honda's obsession, finding the sweet spot. Michimasa Fujino, the lead engineer and eventual president of Honda Aircraft Company, spent years testing engine placement above the wing, not just on top, but in extremely specific three-dimensional positions relative to the wing surface, using wind tunnel testing and computational fluid dynamics. Along with research collaboration tied to NASA, Honda's team discovered something counterintuitive. If you place the engine nacelle at one very precise spot above and behind the wing, the airflow patterns from the wing and the airflow around the engine don't fight each other. They interact constructively. Instead of two separate turbulent airflows crashing into one another and creating drag, the wing's airflow and the engine's airflow blend smoothly. At the right position, this actually cancels out some of the wave drag that builds up as the aircraft approaches transonic speeds. In simple terms, put the engine in the wrong spot above the wing and you get chaos. Put it in the one right spot, and the plane becomes more efficient than if the engine weren't there at all in that configuration. This is the core discovery behind what Honda calls the over-the-wing engine mount, or OTWEM. It's not just engines on wings in NIME, it's engines at one mathematically precise location that took years to find. What this design actually buys you. So what do you actually get once you solve that puzzle? 4 major payoffs: speed and fuel efficiency. Because the rear fuselage no longer needs pylons or structural supports for engines, and because the wing itself was designed around natural laminar flow, meaning air stays smooth and attached to the wing surface for longer, the HondaJet cuts through the air with less resistance. That translates into a cruise speed of roughly 480 plus miles per hour, among the fastest in its class, along with meaningfully better fuel economy than similarly sized jets with conventional tail-mounted engines. A bigger cabin. This might be the most underrated benefit. In a traditional light jet, the rear fuselage is full of structural reinforcement to handle engine mounts. Remove that requirement entirely, and suddenly that whole section of the airplane is free real estate. Honda used that freed up space to build a noticeably larger cabin and a bigger rear baggage compartment than jets of a similar external footprint. a huge selling point for private jet buyers who care about legroom and luggage as much as speed. A quieter ride. On a rear fuselage-mounted jet, the engines sit just a few feet from the passenger's head, separated by a thin bulkhead. On the HondaJet, the engines are mounted up and away from the cabin, out on the wing structure. The wing itself acts almost like a barrier between the engine and the cabin, and the physical distance means less noise and vibration make it inside. Passengers consistently describe the cabin as unusually quiet for a jet this size. Practical maintenance and ground clearance benefits. Because the engines sit up on the wing rather than low to the ground, there's less risk of the intakes ingesting runway debris, something engineers call foreign object damage. Or FOD. It also means the landing gear doesn't need to be as long as it would if the engines hung underneath the wings, which saves weight and simplifies the gear design. And ironically, despite being mounted higher up, the engines are still easy for ground crews to access for routine maintenance without needing special lift equipment. There's also a subtler benefit: weight distribution. Putting heavy engines above and near the wing's center of lift, rather than way out at the tail, improves the aircraft's pitch stability and handling characteristics. Why didn't anyone do this before? Here's the natural question: if this configuration is so good, why did it take until the 2010s for a production business jet to use it? The honest answer is that it's genuinely hard to certify and validate. Aerospace engineers had tried overwing engine placements before and consistently ran into drag and buffeting problems, because finding that sweet spot position requires an enormous amount of aerodynamic testing, the kind of multi-year research program that most manufacturers simply couldn't justify for a light jet program. There are also structural challenges. The wing has to be engineered to handle not just aerodynamic loads, but also the weight and vibration of a jet engine sitting directly on top of it, plus the heat and exhaust from the engine, which can't be allowed to damage the wing surface over time. Honda's willingness to spend the better part of 2 decades, reportedly dating back to aerodynamic research programs in the 1990s, on solving this one specific problem is what let them succeed where others hadn't. It's a case study in how a company with patience and a research-first culture can turn a textbook footnote into a signature product. Advantage. The bigger picture: at the end of the day, the HondaJet's engine placement isn't there to make it look futuristic, even though it clearly does. Every part of that decision traces back to a chain of aerodynamic reasoning. Solve the drag problem at one precise location, and you unlock a lighter rear structure, a bigger cabin, a quieter ride, and better fuel economy, all at once. It's a great example of how the strangest looking engineering decisions are often the most deliberate ones. Nobody accidentally puts a jet engine on top of a wing. You do it because you spent years proving, mathematically and in wind tunnels, that it's actually the smarter place for it to be. So next time you see a HondaJet on the tarmac and think its engines look like they're in the wrong place, now you know they're actually in the one right place. Honda spent almost 20 years searching for it. If you want to see how this compares to the tail-mounted engines on a Citation or a Phenom side by side, let me know in the comments and I'll break that down in a future video. If you learned something new today, hit like, subscribe for more deep dives into aviation engineering, and I'll see you in the next one.